Hi guys!
Hi!
Greetings from the west coast of the United States, close to Portland in Oregon.
So you may be wondering what we're doing here. Well, this is part of our journey.
Right. Today we want to talk about the 3 reasons why we decided to do the next steps of our fertility treatment in the United States
Yes.
versus in Germany, where we had the last 6 failed IVF cycles.
So let's see where this road takes us on.
And there's a helicopter in the picture.
So reason number 1, why are we doing this? Is the genetic test. We have the ability here to do a genetic test to the eggs when they are in the blastocyst phase. What does that mean? After the eggs are fertilized on the 5th day, they come to this stage where we can do a genetic test and to find out what are the possibilities and the healthy of this egg that is being fertilized.
The interesting part, what we at least didn't know, and we talked to lots of friends and they didn't know either, that most of the not successful pregnancies are actually not down to the woman trying to carry out the pregnancy. 98% it's down to the actual egg, and therefore down to the actual embryo. So what happens is, in Germany at least, when you give back a fertilized egg in blastocyst state or before, it doesn't matter, that the body of the woman will actually be used as a test lab if this embryo is what you call genetically normal. I know that is kind of a harsh way to say it, but it's just a very medical term for saying that the blastocyst or the embryo is healthy, meaning that it can actually survive the whole 9 months of a pregnancy and actually turn out into a healthy born baby.
Yeah, but different is that with all the tests, you're just putting back to the women eggs which look good enough by the microscope, who've been looking at them in the first 3 to 5 days, but with a certainty that it's a very healthy one that could make it through the time.
So in Germany, what
It's a little
by law,
blind.
the only thing you're allowed to do as a doctor in fertility treatments is that you actually take a look at how many cells the embryo already has after 5 days, and that's basically the main criteria how you rate when you have 5 embryos, the good ones versus the not so good ones. When actually that's just, unfortunately, a very, very, very simplistic and rather not fully complete way of actually looking at it. But law doesn't allow you to do actually PGS, which is genetic screening on the actual embryo stain. So what you do then is basically you can do a biopsy on the embryo, and it can tell us by a significance of 99% how sure is it actually that this embryo is genetically normal.
And the interesting part is that this test may last around 2 weeks.
What's very important about this is that the actual embryos, based on the eggs coming from the woman, are less likely to be genetically normal depending on the age of the woman. So basically, very simply speaking, you can think about actually a curve of genetically normal embryos which goes down by age. And you can say, let's say, starting with the age of 30, you have a significant degradation, and starting with the age of 35, the exponential part of this curve really kicks in. What does that mean? In simple terms, that when a young woman has an egg, this egg is by, let's say, roughly 70% genetically normal. So in 30% of the cases, whenever there is actually a fertilization going on, in 30% of the cases you will not have a successful outcome of a pregnancy, meaning a live birth. And 30% already sounds a lot, but just moving forward to 35 or even 40 years old woman, this curve goes
chances
down
go
to
down.
basically 20, 15, at some point 10%. So the chance that even that a pregnancy actually kicks in, that you will carry out a baby and the pregnancy will last 9 months, is less than 10%.
And that's the point when we had thought all these years the eggs that we got in the process of stimulation and they were not tested, maybe one will have make it through. In this case, I'm already not being able to do this process of stimulation again.
Right. So we might have chosen some eggs, some embryos in Germany to give them back to Anna, even though they were not genetically normal, versus some others which did not develop so great in the first couple of days were actually genetically normal. But by now we reached a state where only 10% of Anna's eggs are genetically normal, and therefore nature tells us it's too late to have a baby. So let's go to reason number 2.
Yes.
So that was a quick drive back to Portland with beautiful sunshine weather. Okay, we're just kidding. We basically had 2 days of pouring rain. I would
Not
say
different than Hamburg.
I would actually say it's even shittier, at least in the last couple of days.
So we're used to that.
Yeah. So where were we? We were at point number 2. And the second reason are success rates.
So statistics, what is it really like? Can you explain us a little more?
Yeah, it's quite simple. So basically, success rates is looking at the past, at, very simply speaking, how often was there actually a pregnancy after an IVF cycle, and more interestingly, even a live birth. So there we already touched 2 very, very interesting parts on success rate. Number 1 of these 2 aspects of success rates is who actually keeps track of them. Is it the clinic themselves, or is it some official entity, right?
Yeah, so when I was asking to Steffen, why don't we just go to the closest one, to the country who can offer us that, the results we want or what we were looking for, like we can do it in Panama, we can do it in Spain, which is close to us, but why to travel so far to America and to the north? It was exactly that point when he explained me in more details.
Yeah, so it's quite simple. The United States has a law since several years which tells clinics to officially keep record and report them based on a standard to the CDC, the Center of Disease Control. They actually take care and publish those rates. Unfortunately, it's always 2 years in the back because they need some time to get those results, but they publish them. They publish a 500-page report, they publish even an Excel file. And we will go through that, how do you can actually sort that, etc., because it's very detailed. It's broken down into all kinds of factors, like actually the age of the woman going through the IVF cycle, was it a donated egg, all kinds of facts you can find there, and basically that's the part number 1. So who actually tracks those? Is it an official body or is it just the clinic itself? And to give you a comparison, in Germany there is no public track besides what clinics do. There is no such thing as a government organization which actually expects clinics to report those. It's just basically on their own responsibility.
But did I believe it or understood it right? In Spain they do have it.
Right. In Spain, they do report them, but also again there it's just a half official
information.
No, it's half an official organization. The difference is it's not a law, so clinics can opt in, but they don't have to report, and it's also not as complete as in the US, and that's the second reason.
I can actually help tell you that how it helped us when we received these centers. At least the 3 top ones that we could decide to go for is where we went in. How can we measure which one is the best? And depending on the treatment that we decided to go for, is when we decided, okay, let's compare the results of these clinics using the statistics, and that really helped us.
Right. So the second reason is to actually look into the success rates into detail and see what success is being measured. So again, unfortunately, that's kind of a technical way of talking about it, but in my point of view, it is the right way to think about this in particular. So when I say that, what do I mean? There are 2 kinds of measuring success rates. So one is measuring how often, how likely is it that your treatment, your IVF cycle actually results in a pregnancy. And obviously everybody would say, yeah, that's what we want, that's our goal, right? But unfortunately, that's not the actual goal. I mean, we all go through this in order for us to actually have a baby. And to have a baby, in technical terms, is described in those success rates as a live birth. So if you look at this trying to be objective, what you're trying to achieve is having a live birth. And that's the ultimate goal. And that's where the big difference kicks in, because in the United States, in those reports, they actually expect the clinic to keep track on the live birth and not just on actually kicked in pregnancy. And that's the big difference towards Spain, for example. So in Spain, in the halfly official published success rates, we will not find any information about live birth.
Yeah, so, because most of in vitros, they do go to the stage that you get pregnant, but lots of them don't fulfill the cycle, and then they have miscarriages during the 3-4 months after getting pregnant. So that's why we were looking on a live birth result.
Yeah. Again, unfortunately, the whole topic of IVF, or switching from natural way of conceiving a baby towards all these IVF and fertilization treatments, takes a little away the romance of the whole process. But in the moment we accepted that, we realized that actually we're looking at success rate. And it is simply a measure for the quality of the genetic labs, of the fertilization lab, of the whole process, and the selection process of the clinic itself.
Yes.
So that's reason number 2 why we ended up in the US, and more importantly in Portland, because that's now the connection to the third one. Portland rated in the last couple of years as significant best on success rates with egg donorship in our age group. So what's egg donorship, you might ask? And that's reason number 3 why we actually moved to the US. Why don't you start, Anna, talking about that?
Okay, reason number 3, we talk about egg donors. As you may know already, we tried several in vitros in the past. It didn't work. The time ran by, and unfortunately, it's not that we wasted these last 4 years, but the age keep on running, and my eggs simply doesn't work anymore. To be honest, we have thought about adopting several times. Unfortunately, that doesn't work for us anymore as well, because I'm 44, and in Germany by law I cannot have a kid anymore, and in Panama it's quite difficult as well. Until we get a baby or a kid that we can adopt, it will take us as well a long process to go there. And somebody called my attention and say, would you be able to adopt an egg? And it was a funny way of painting it. I never thought about it. And when we talked about it, we were like, what is it about? So we all know, it's very common known, this sperm donation is anonymous in lots of countries. In Germany it's completely fine and is offered in the fertility centers, but not the egg donation. And we try to understand this process a little more, so that's why we end up here.
Right, so in Germany, by law, I won't mention it because in English it sounds kind of weird, it's simply forbidden. So egg donorship is simply forbidden. It's not a European law, it's a German law, and therefore in other European countries it's actually allowed. So like Anna already mentioned, Spain was an alternative we took into consideration, and in terms of egg donorship, Spain is perfectly fine. There is a significant difference again versus the US, and there are pros and cons. For us, we did the evaluation, and for us the US is better. We can just tell you, trying to be neutral, we can tell you the simple difference between Spain, for example, and other European countries and the US is. So when you go to Spain and you take the service of another woman who donates you her younger eggs, you actually don't know who that woman is, and you don't have any significant background on her.
It's completely anonymous.
It's by law, by European law, it's completely anonymous, and that has advantages and disadvantages for us.
And of course, they do the tests and the procedures they have to do before donating and giving to you, and they try to make it in a very good way, scientifically well done, but still you don't know the background of the donation.
So what does that mean? It simply means that the baby or the kid, or at some point the grown-up, will never know her or his genetic background. Meaning, if there are ever any complications, there is no such thing as the family background on the female part, right? On the genetic mother part.
Which for us was really, really important when we talk about it, like thinking in the health of the future of our kid, that if some disease, let's say, is needed to know what happens in the genetics, we will be more able then to decide and to help in on the procedures. We hope that it never happens, but it is really important.
Right. So, and that's the difference versus the US. By law, there is no such thing as definite anonymous. So it's actually a decision based on the parents, us, and
the donor.
And the donor. If you want to meet, there is a possibility to just sign yourself up into a database. So when the kid actually at some point wants to know her genetic
or his genetic
mother
family
background,
he
can start looking for it and will actually find, but it's a one-way process, so the donor cannot actively look itself. It's kind of and very similar to the situation of adopted kids.
We were really looking a lot of this information because even for adopting, there's always these procedures when you adopt a kid. If you want to tell the kid in which stage is this better time to tell them they're adopted and what will be the consequences. So we try to understand each other where we were heading to, and we decided we want to do this, and therefore we want to do it all the right way down, with transparency, with trusting, and be very clear about what is the best.
So maybe we should mention one more difference between Spain and the US, and its cost. So the US is significantly more expensive in terms of egg donorship. You can discuss about why. We have our thoughts about that, but we rather keep them for ourselves. So in the US it's simply more expensive, and it's something you have to take into consideration as well. So let's sum it up. What were the 3 reasons why we decided to come to the US, and more specifically to Portland, Oregon? third, like we just discussed, was that here we have the possibility of egg donorship, which is not exclusive, like we mentioned. You can also have that in other countries, but the conditions under the egg donorship is being handled here in the US was the one which fits us most, let's say, which fits our expectations most. Number 2 was
statistics.
Success rates.
The number guy.
Anna's favorite. We will definitely link for you down there in the description the Excel files which you can download at the CDC. We will also at some point publish a video where we actually will go through and explain it in more detail. So number 1, and for us, actually, we are very torn in between those 3, right? All the 3 are very important for us. But number 1, the way we started was the genetic testing, PGS, genetic screening of the actual embryo to see if the embryo is actually chromosomical normal, so genetically normal, and therefore more likely to actually survive a whole pregnancy. And that ties in perfectly well together with number 2, the success rates, right? So if you give back a genetically normal embryo to Anna, the chance that we actually end up with having a live birth per cycle is significantly higher than without. And for us that's important because unfortunately we're simply running out of time, so we're trying to minimize the amount of cycles we actually need to fulfill our dream of having our baby together.
So let's press on, cross fingers, whatever in different countries we say, and wish for the best.
Seriously, man? Why now?